All right, good morning, folks. My name is Mason Trumbull, Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. I am here today with Jenny Dixon, our Director of the Wildlife Division, and Colonel Chris Lewis, our Colonel for the Environmental Conservation Police. We are here to provide an update on the status of the bear cubs and also to provide an important message for the public on how to live with bears in a way that best protects the bears. I'd like to invite Jenny Dixon up to share a little bit about the events over the weekend and the status of the cubs going forward.
Our staff have been pretty busy for the last several days. You know, we spent a lot of time since Thursday trying to keep tabs on where the cubs were. We had staff in the field from Friday afternoon right through the weekend. When we got information on where the cubs had been sighted most recently on Sunday, we made sure our staff was ready to get out there very early on Monday morning, and we had staff out there for about 12 hours on Monday working on capturing the cubs. So it's not a simple process for our staff. It takes a while. Wild animals behave differently all the time, so you have to sort of adapt as you go and do what we can to get them out of the woods safely. It's never a simple procedure. It's a waiting game with wild animals, and so it took a long time. We were successfully able to capture one cub about early afternoon. It took a little while for us to get the second cub, and it was luckily just before sunset we were finally able to make that happen. Our staff were out there during a rainstorm. We had some high winds. We had a little bit of lightning, which was making me a little nervous, but we had a successful outcome at the end of the day. So we're very happy that the cubs are healthy. They're doing well. They're awake this morning and a little bit feisty, so we're making the final arrangements right now to place them with a licensed wildlife rehabilitator until they're a little bit older and we can bring them back to Connecticut. You know, they need a little bit of extra support right now, although they're healthy and have been doing well all weekend. Probably would have a very good chance of surviving. We did make the decision that they need a little bit of extra support, and because of how the situation has changed over time, it was important for us to respond to that. So that's kind of where the cubs are, and we're really glad that they're doing well this morning.
And where are they located right now?
They're here at the property.
And where were they going for the rehabilitation?
That's what we're still trying to finalize with some other states. So we've got calls into a number of other states right now to finalize who's willing to accept them and who has space. So we should know that very shortly.
And before we transition to questions, I'm going to step in here, Jenny, and we'll do questions at the end. Thank you, Jenny. Our wildlife team's done a great job, spent long hours over the weekend and yesterday responding to this situation. We have gotten a lot of questions about the ongoing investigation. I'm going to invite Colonel Lewis up to provide a quick update on that, and we will be taking Jenny will be coming up after this, and then we'll be taking questions at the end.
Thank you, Mason. Just real quick update on our investigation. We are investigating this. Our police division is investigating this incident, like we do every other incident that involves wildlife. We take this seriously. We just ask for patience as we take our steps and we do a thorough job on this. As soon as we complete our investigation, we'll make that known and we'll be able to release that to you and to the public.
Thank you, Colonel. Connecticut has seen a growing bear population and a rise in human-bear interactions. And we held a press briefing this morning because, unfortunately, we have seen some negative behaviors that encourage behaviors that are actually dangerous to the bears. And so we'd like to use this time to educate people in Connecticut on the best way that you can help prevent habituated bears in the future. And Jenny, I'd like to ask you to come up and share a little bit more on that.
Absolutely. One of the things that we really want to stress for everybody who's listening to this right now is that if you care about our wildlife, not just our bears, but our wildlife in general, it's really important to let them do what they do naturally. With our bears in particular, it's very important that we don't feed them or allow them to get easy access to human-associated foods. That has the unintended consequence of getting bears very comfortable around people. It gets them to do something that we call become habituated. That means they start to lose their fear of people and they start to look around our homes and our backyards for easy sources of food. They start to lose their fear of humans, and that becomes very, very dangerous for them. It's also dangerous for the public. So if you care about bears, we really implore you not to leave your bird feeders up during this time of year. There's a lot of natural food available for bears to eat. There's a lot of natural food for the birds to eat. So the birds don't need it, and the bears definitely shouldn't have it. It's really important to make sure that you don't put your garbage out until collection day, because that's another way that bears can get a very easy meal very, very quickly. Not feeding your pets outdoors, also a helpful thing. If you have that nice barbecue event over the weekend, make sure you clean your grill up after you're done, because that smell can be very enticing for a lot of wildlife species. There's a lot of other really good common sense tips available on our Wildlife Division's webpage. It's called Living with Bears, Living with Black Bears. And just take a look at that, learn some of the tips that are there, and help be bear smart in our state. I think what most people don't realize in Connecticut is that our entire state is bear country now. So it doesn't matter which town you live in, you could expect to see black bears wherever you are. You need to respond accordingly and help us protect our bears.
Thank you, Jenny. You know, we see some concerning trends on social media where people post photos of bears in their garbage or eating out of their bird feeders, and that's not cute. That's dangerous for the bears. And so if you are either intentionally or unintentionally allowing bears to eat human food or human-sourced food, then you are harming those bears, and we want to get that message out. So please, if you care about bears in Connecticut, do not allow them to eat your food or food near your house. At this time, we'll take questions.
Hi there. Can you just say, I know you mentioned this, Jenny, just a little bit of time ago, but can you specifically say why, again, you guys changed course? We know that they were initially going to be left in the wild. That's always the goal, to be able to leave them in the wild. But can you specifically, again, say why you changed course? We had heard that there was some concern of human interference. So can you specifically say why you changed that?
Absolutely. You know, every wildlife response that we do is based on a lot of different factors, and we rely a lot on our experience continually assessing the situation, assessing for changes in the situation. And, you know, in this particular instance, over time, it became very clear that some of the things that we had hoped were going to be possible probably weren't. We were seeing a lot of posts encouraging people to try and feed the cubs and try to do other things that were well intended but would have put them in a very tough position. And those kinds of things, I think, made it very important for us to think about whether or not that we needed to change our approach, because, you know, we were really worried that the cubs were going to be put in jeopardy, so it became much more important for us to make sure that they were safe.
So human interference was the reason you guys decided to.
It was certainly a lot of the encouragement of human interference on social media, absolutely.
How are the bears handling their captivity right now? Obviously, that can be pretty jarring.
You know, they're pretty young at this point. You know, that certainly they're well equipped to survive at this age. Very sharp claws, very sharp teeth. But, you know, they were a little groggy last night when they came back, obviously. This morning they're still a little sleepy, but they're feisty. You know, they're in someplace where they're not seeing a lot of people. It's very, very quiet. It's dark. So they're pretty chill.
It's going to sound like an odd question, but obviously everybody knows the mom's name is Bobby. Have the cubs been named?
We generally don't name cubs for a very important reason. You know, when we start to name them, then we start to think of them as pets. And wild animals are not pets. And when we start to make that mental connection that we would with our dog or our cat, that's when we start to do things that are not in their best interest. So we typically do not name wild animals.
And how old are the cubs, by the way?
About 4.5 months.
Can you talk to us about the process of rehabilitating the cubs? What all does that entail, just in a quick nutshell, to get them back out there?
Sure. Really quickly, it involves making sure that they've got ample food and trying to minimize the human interaction with the cubs to the greatest extent possible, giving them plenty of exercise so that they can, you know, continue to grow their muscles, climb up and down things, do all the things an adult bear would do, but make sure, again, that they've got supplemental food while they're doing it. Teaching them, you know, sort of how to forage on their own is also part of that. So it's a complicated process. That's why there aren't a lot of people who do it. It's pretty labor intensive, but it also requires that really important step of minimizing human contact to the greatest extent possible, because we want to make sure when these cubs are able to be released to the wild that they're not put in a bad position.
And how do you determine when that time is, when it's ready to release them?
Usually it's going to be when they're about 8 months old. It's going to depend on how well they do, and we'll work with the wildlife rehabilitator to determine that, but that's generally the goal. So it'll be, sometime late summer, early fall.
And I'm sorry if I missed that part, it was already out there, but how old are these cubs?
About 4.5 months.
Okay, thank you.
And Colonel, I know this is mostly about information about the bears, but I did want to ask you briefly about the investigation.
Sure.
The off-duty Ridgefield police officer, I know he or she has not been identified, but can you confirm, were they the shooter, and then also was the shooting on private property?
At this time, we can't confirm that because we're still under investigation. Private property, yes, that's accurate because pretty much everything's private property in Connecticut. So it was on private property that it occurred.
And it was like the shooter was I'm not saying it was officer, but it was their private property where the bear was found. Is that fair to say, or?
We can't release that at this point, but once we complete our investigation, we will bring that forth.
Thanks, sir.
I have a question. Where
Yeah.
would, this is for,
Jenny.
where would the cubs be placed when they're old enough, to go out on their own? Do you guys have like a certain location you guys put them out in the wild in any location in Connecticut, or?
That's something we're going to have to assess as, they progress and get older. We're going to need to determine what the best location is for them. I suspect that we won't be placing them any place close to an urban environment just because that's going to make it a little bit more challenging for them. But some of that's going to depend on how they respond while they're in captivity and, how they're looking when it's closer to time for release. So it's really hard for me to say that right now, but it will be someplace that's very wooded and has lots of suitable habitat for bears.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Very good.